All right. Hi there. So, have you ever asked someone for help and come away feeling like they solved your problem, but you're not sure how? And if the situation comes up again, the best that you could manage is just to ask them to do whatever that thing is they did over again. It's not a great feeling. So how do you avoid being on the other side of that? How do you make sure that when you are giving somebody help, the person you're helping feels supported and like they learned from the experience? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to show you a framework for giving other people help when you have an idea what to do and they don't, and your goal is to help them learn how to handle this situation. And this comes up. Oh, yeah, there are no slides. It's fine. I don't believe in slides a lot of the time. There'll be some slides sometimes. It's all good. It's all good. You just have to look at me. So this comes up in a wide range of situations. You can put these tools into practice if you're helping a teammate get unstuck. And you can put them into practice helping your kids with their math homework. You can put them into practice coaching a sport, I think. Not that I coach sports. I have spent my career as an engineering manager and a senior developer, so my examples are all going to be drawn from debugging, and hopefully that's familiar for a lot of you. But the key elements of the situation are that you have a pretty good idea of what you would try, the person you're helping wants to be able to do this independently in the future, and it is worth spending some time right now to help them become independent. So that means this is not your crisis approach. This is about taking a little time right now to create self-sufficiency in the person you're helping. And the first trick of this situation is realizing when you are in the situation to apply it. So I want you to imagine you have a school-age kid and they come to you wanting help with their math homework, a worksheet of multiplication exercises. So do you just start telling them the answers to the questions? The correct answer, by the way, is no. But why not? The point of math homework is not to have a sheet full of multiplied numbers. Those are easy to come by. It's to practice how to go through the process of getting them. If you just do it, you are not actually helping. But what about when someone on your team comes to you with a bug in some code and you're familiar with it? They have a task this is holding up. There is work that is falling behind because this isn't solved. And you could just fix it. And why shouldn't you? This isn't like your kid's homework. This is real work. The output matters. And that's all true. That's all true, but this is more like the homework than it seems. Tech is not medicine. We do not have years of degrees and accreditations and practice before they let us near a patient. We learn on the job. And that means every task has an element of the job, producing the results the business needs. But it also has an element of learning. And there's a bit of that math worksheet in every task, because part of becoming more experienced is having practice at all of the underlying things that we do, and we earn it by doing them. So, if you do it for them, the job gets done, but the learning stalls, which means as a leader on the team, you need to make a call, which is critical in the moment. And I can't give you an answer, but I encourage you to err on the side of learning, because if this situation comes up again, time you spend learning pays off, whereas if you just do it, you've made yourself a dependency. Do you really want to field that call every time this comes up in the future? But even so, knowing you want to let someone learn is not the same as knowing how to support them. So let's start out with 3 principles that you can keep in mind to help. And by the way, for folks like me who like to take photos of the slides with the key takeaways, I will give you a slide with everything at the end of the talk. Our first principle is hands-off engagement, which means you are not taking any actions. The person you're helping, they are the active one. But you are fully engaged. You are looking at everything, you are collaborating with them, and you are definitely not checking email on your phone. And this helps curb your temptation to do something without explaining why. It makes sure the other person gets the experience of taking each step, and it lets them set the pace. But in your engagement, you're going to lead with questions. Why do we lead with questions? Well, that thinking you just did, trying to answer the question, that is why. And one-on-one, you can do better than I just did and wait for the other person to answer, even if it's a little bit uncomfortably long. If you're tempted to tell them something, see if you can ask a question instead. Not, oh, that error message says it's on line 18, but is anything here telling us where we should look? Let them try to answer it. Then, if they still need help, you can tell them whatever it was you were originally thinking. And in the process, you can try the final principle. Present evidence. Don't just assert things. Show the other person how it is that you know. If something that you see gives you additional information, call that out. If there's something you learned in the past that's relevant here, can you give them a reference to learn more? Your understanding is rooted in context. You need to share that context if you're going to properly share your skill. So there we go. 3 principles. And like all good conference takeaways, we have a snappy acronym. You want to help them. These principles are the how for giving someone support without taking over. But there's also a consistent way for us to apply these principles. There's a process we can follow to make it easier. The first step is we need to ask them for the context. What's happening? What have you tried so far? What seems interesting about this situation to you? Because help is not one size fits all, and your goal is to give them the right help, the help they need. The only way you're going to do that is to understand what they already know and what they've already tried. And when you ask them for context, you are prompting them to engage in one of the most long-standing technical debugging processes. We explain things to rubber ducks and house pets and mirrors, not because we expect them to help, but because the process of explaining something forces us to think through it clearly. When we think in silence, our minds can and will take shortcuts. We convince ourselves that we have fully understood something when what we've actually done is skipped over thinking about it. But you are more than just a convenient prop for explanations. Unlike a rubber duck, you are not going to sit in silence. While they are explaining, it is your job to listen carefully and confirm or correct the things they say. When you agree that they've said something right, tell them. It can be as simple as going, yeah, that makes sense. And when you don't agree, take the opportunity to correct them. Again, remembering, questions are more effective than statements. If they say, I am sure it's a bug in the compiler, it is never a bug in the compiler, you can ask, why do you think so? Your goal is to make sure their explanation has rigor, that they can back up the things that they're saying, and that they don't leave important details out. And as you start to understand the extent of what they know, you're probably going to see some things that they've missed. So now it's your job to highlight those key details to them so that they're working with the full context. Part of your expertise is knowing what might be relevant, so you want to guide them to see it too. And again, we do this by leading with questions. What other information can we get from this error message? We're prompting them to discover what we see from experience. Where else could we look for information about the system? We're reminding them about resources they may be ignoring. Are there logs or monitoring, perhaps? And this requires some patience. You need to give them time to answer and probably time to be wrong. Your goal is to encourage them to explore the tools at their disposal, knowing they have your support. By confirming, correcting, and highlighting, you make the process of discovery smoother by helping to avoid false paths. One of the big challenges we face when we're solving a novel problem is just not knowing whether the things we observe are useful or just distractions. And by providing feedback, you reassure the person you're helping that they're on a path that leads to progress. And when you provide the evidence for your statements, you give them the tools to make that decision for themselves in the future. So finally, you are going to prompt them to pick an action and try it. And it is critical that they select the next step. Remember, your goal is to help them become self-sufficient. That means acting independently. And if they can't come up with options, you can help them think about it. but they need to practice making that call of what to try and why to try it. And they're probably not going to pick what you think is best. That's okay. Your goal is to make sure they are acting intentionally. That means they have a plan for what they're doing and an idea of what they might learn from it. You're not going to settle for a random stab. And in the rare case their suggestion is a terrible idea, we could delete the database and start over, you can explain why that would be a problem and stop them. But you're not here to keep them from making mistakes. You are here just to make sure the mistakes aren't catastrophic and to prompt them to keep thinking and working through the problem intentionally. Now, this pattern works for giving a single nudge to sort of unstick a blocked situation, or you can repeat it in a cycle to support someone through a multi-step process. After they act, ask them what they learned by doing that, and just keep going. And all right, maybe not every conference takeaway does have a good acronym, but this process works even without one. Now, these principles and this process will set you up to help people who need it, but I have one more trick left in my book that I can teach you. Because once you've started helping people using this technique, you can guide them to be even more self-sufficient by adding one more question. What am I going to ask you now? By turning the process itself into a question, you encourage people to internalize how the process works. You're going to ask me what I've tried so far. You're going to ask me to justify that explanation I just gave you. You're going to ask me what I'm planning to do now. And when they correctly anticipate the process, confirm they're right. Let them know. They're following the process now without you needing to tell them. But if they jump to a future step, well, that's an opportunity to remind them what they're skipping and explain why we do it first. And if they suggest something completely unexpected, well, ask them why they thought you would suggest that. Because you're going to learn a ton about their mental model of problem solving that way. And if they have no idea, you can just tell them. But over time, encourage them to at least guess. Because without ever walking them through the process, you teach them this framework, or any other useful mental framework you have, by encouraging them to anticipate you. Instead of needing to come to you for help, they can ask the version of you in their head. And asking that you is just asking themselves. All right, so let's put it all together. I did promise a slide you can grab a photo of. Here it is. To give good help, there are 3 key principles. You have hands-off engagement, leading with questions, and presenting your evidence. If you keep those in mind whenever you are sharing expertise, that'll really help create an environment for learning. In practice, there is a 4-step process to guide someone who wants help. Ask them to give you the context, confirm and correct statements they're making, highlight any key details they have missed, and get them to decide on the next steps. And finally, you can help them learn this or any other guided framework by asking them to anticipate the questions you're going to ask them. By doing that, you help them build a mental model of the process itself. That's it. I hope this helps you help your teams. If you want to talk to me more about this sort of thing, come find me for the Q&A or catch up with me on Mastodon, LinkedIn, or the LeadDev Slack. Thanks so much.